Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa Bagliuco, and welcome to Personal Pans, conversations about belief, transformation, and all the weird things that we experience. Today's episode is with Irisanya Moon, an author, witch, and priestess who was kind enough to sit down with me and talk about the reclaiming tradition of witchcraft, which I knew nothing about before talking with her. She's also a friend of Mortalis, which is why I know Irisanya in the first place. We had a really great conversation about witchcraft and activism, and we recorded this a couple weeks ago, well before the war in Ukraine. And I think it's a relevant conversation for now in terms of thinking about what we can do to make the world a better place. The whole concept of reclaiming, which I'm probably going to botch because, again, I only know about this through Irisanya, is the idea of you situated in a community and the work that you can do to make that community better. And I know a lot of people are despairing, thinking that they can't make a difference in the world or a limited difference, but all those little actions add up. And it's good to remember that you are in a community, you can make positive changes for yourself and for other people. And having that as a focus of witchcraft really speaks to me. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Here's Irisanya. I don't know, this podcast is pretty open, right? Like I had Mortalis on and we ended up talking about trauma for 3 hours.
Love Mortalis. Love it.
Mortalis is one of my favorite human. I can't even call them human because they just are this otherworldly presence that exists now in the same time space as we do. I'm very grateful for that.
It is a gift. Absolutely.
It is, absolutely. So how did you meet Mortalis?
So hilariously, I'd followed their work for a little bit, and somehow we got friended on Facebook as these things happen.
Yeah.
And they were, I think it was the end of 2020 around Samhain, they were going to put together this sort of conference, beginners to witchcraft, or I don't remember what it was called.
Yes.
But they were asking for folks who might want to talk.
Yeah.
And I didn't know them, but I was like, hey. And so
yeah,
they asked me, they're like, okay, great. And so, I talked about, I think, building relationships with deities.
Yeah.
And I got to be one of the panelists. And so we all got to chat. So I got to know this little group of folks that I'd only seen sort of in the periphery and my periphery. And It was the beginning of an online friendship. So we've been
I love that.
in contact. I mean, I have one of their candles right there.
Their candle smells so good.
Oh, funny story. So this morning I woke up, I was like, wow, that candle, I can still smell it. Oh, I was teaching last night and I had it lit. This is the second time I've done it with this candle. I don't know.
No.
Like I have such a fire safety.
Of course, yes.
I have to tell them, be like, that is a super safe candle. Like my cats didn't go after it. Like,
right.
I woke up and I was like, oh, I love this. Oh.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Well, you read a lot about, again, Iris and messages, right? So there might be a message here for you.
Oy, too many candles lit that you're not tending. Yeah, that feels like that could be true.
Oh boy, yeah, that hit me hard too.
To be fair, I'm actually teaching, I think it's like 6 classes within 8 days this week for some reason. I'm my own boss, so it's really only my fault. And
uh-huh. But again, ADHD, right? Where it's like I'm either on the couch, like yesterday, I could not make anything happen. And today I'm already planning like everything I'm gonna do after we talk today.
It's on off. I feel it.
That's it. When I used to teach chainmail classes, I would go to Gen Con, and I love that. I love it there. But I would book myself pretty much all day. And I just would plan for that. I'm like, I'm going to teach 10 classes this weekend.
Yep. Mhm.
That's what's going to happen. And then I am not going to do anything for a week after I get home,
Right.
but I will have made enough money that I can account for that.
Crash. Right.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, in reclaiming, we have witch camps. And so often, you teach and do rituals straight for 4 to 7 days when you're hired.
Yes.
And so, I'm trained, I guess that's a word to use, to do that.
Yeah.
And crash.
That's exactly it. Yes. Because after that kind of energy expenditure, you can't do anything else. Your body is tapped out at that point.
There's a lot of food involved. That's pretty much what I can do afterwards.
But that's good, right? That's grounding. It gets you to a point. Exactly. Back to the earth.
Exactly.
I love it.
So
yeah.
It's really great. I mean, of course, like all the things I'm doing are so lovely. And, I taught elements on Tuesday. Yes, last night I co-taught a writing group, like this Writing Between the Worlds that a friend and I do.
Oh, I love it.
Where we write in sacred space. And tonight I'm wrapping up a 6-month Aphrodite.
Oh my gosh.
Tomorrow is another elements class with a different group. And then on Sunday is starting the next Aphrodite. So, oops. It's around Valentine's Day. I knew, like, I always put the Aphrodites around there.
Of course. That makes the most sense. I know. It's like,
here I am.
So that's the thing, when it's in your head, you're like, this is brilliant. This is all going to work out. And then you go through it. And you're like, what am I doing to myself?
I think, it's absolutely that. And because everything's planned, 3 to 6 months ahead of time.
Of course,
and so, but one of the things I noticed this time was that I've actually taught all these, and I'm not, like, it's not a huge, like, nervous or anything like that. And it's one of the first times I've noticed that in my body, which has been so delightful.
Of course.
And I kind of feel like I'm just on the wave of magic and whatever 3 to 6 months ago me was thinking. And
that's great. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it feels good.
Yeah, of course.
Sounds ridiculous, but it feels good.
Well, that, again, when you're in that flow, when you're in that sacred space, you know it, right? You know it in your body. And especially when you have that calm groundedness of, I've done this before, I know what I'm doing. This, something might come up, but you have just that kind of earthy confidence, I guess, of just like, no, I'm grounded. This is happening. It's amazing. It's all going to be good. Yeah.
Or I've gotten really good at faking it. It could be both of the things.
Again, ADHD, masking, that's a thing.
It's so handy.
Exactly. I always talk about just like being able to like pass as normal. Like, I've been able to pass as normal for most of my life. I am very not normal, but no one would be able to know.
Means.
Right.
Acceptable, maybe that's a word.
That's it. Exactly. Right. Conventional, I guess. I can pass as more conventional. I mean, less so with this on, but I can usually pass as pretty conventional.
Same.
Yeah.
It's training.
So for podcast listeners who might not necessarily know, can you talk about your reclaiming ceremonies?
Yep. So I'm Irisanya Moon, by the way. So it's Irisanya. I use she, they pronouns. And I'm also, I want to give acknowledgement to the land that I'm on. I'm on the land of the Southern Pomo and the Great Rancheria peoples, which is now known as Santa Rosa, California, USA. I am initiated in the reclaiming tradition, so it's where most of my witchcraft is from, spiral dance, and Starhawk sort of was one of the folks that founded reclaiming. And to talk about reclaiming that's a whole thing. And so I'm going to do my best to condense it. So it's a witchcraft tradition that seeks to, I actually have my book right here, it has a great line, a community of people working to unify spirit and politics. So it's a heavily activist tradition and is founded out of that. Basically, Starhawk and this woman named Diane Baker started teaching classes because it was the resurgence of the goddess spirituality and feminism and all of that. They started teaching classes to folks because folks wanted to learn how to do their own rituals. And so they started teaching these classes, which ended up becoming the Elements of Magic class, which is one of the core classes of reclaiming.
Yes.
Basically, they, everybody takes one class, they're like, teach us more. And so they came up with more classes. And so suddenly there were all these people that were identifying as reclaiming. And it became such a big collective that they sort of disbanded the collective and became a tradition of witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a document called the Principles of Unity, which it was first created right when everything dissolved so that there could be something to keep all of us together. And then it's been rewritten a few times because we learn, we evolve, we become more inclusive. So how to sum up reclaiming? Reclaiming is activism, magic, spell work to create change in the world, and also to empower ourselves to be our own spiritual authority, to be our own, hopefully, responsible and accountable beings to each other.
I love that. I love this. Again, my background is a little eclectic because in college, sociology, psychology, and also political theory, and kind of looking at the work of Herbert Marcuse, who can be occasionally problematic, but is very much rooted in this tradition of anti-capitalism, this kind of dialectical questioning and of society writ large, and also the affirmation of the subjective, right? So everything about this is so good.
Yeah.
Again, having that awareness of, okay, number one, we're on stolen land. Number two, we are evolving with time and with awareness.
Yes.
So because I think a lot, not to throw shade on anyone, but there is a strange tendency to me in certain occult circles and in paranormal circles to be weirdly exclusive of people who are outside certain accepted gender binaries, or again, the kind of undercurrent of racism, even just the undercurrent of misogyny. And anyway, thank you for talking to me because I love all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, one of the things that is so even when I wrote the book on reclaiming witchcraft, which there are other books, but there aren't that many because we continuously evolve. And I think that even me saying we is not very helpful because we're a tradition of many different ways to interpret things. Even since I wrote that book, the Principles of Unity has changed.
Yeah.
So,
right.
It's hard to pin this down.
Of course.
And which is, for me, exciting because I don't think anything should be rigid. And I hope I'm not. I hope that I just continuously get more open, or at least curious about what folks might need, what they might want, how they might be able to see themselves in a group of people.
Yes, right. And that acknowledgement that, again, what people want or need can change over time. Yes. That was one of the cool things about talking with Mortellus, and this idea that, okay, why are these traditions, the older kind of traditions, a little more revered, right? This idea that everything stopped at some historical point in the past, and we're just recreating these past rituals. When if you are dealing with a living practice and you're really clued into what is going on with people right now, your practice is going to have to evolve in order to accommodate all of these shifting conversations and shifting awareness. Again, 20 years ago when I was in college in women's and gender studies courses, and we were talking about queer theory, the fact that it's mainstream, like, it's not a surprise to me now, any of what's happening, but the fact that it's mainstream, like, this is incredible.
I know. Phew, finally. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Because at the time, I never heard these conversations outside of classes. But now it's a thing that everybody is talking about and engaging with and really questioning again. And again, one more point about like the activism approach, which I really love, because again, magic, I don't think should just be a thing that you just do. It can be a thing that you do, in secret, and that's fine. But that should also inform, if you care about changing the earth and making things better for people, you have to, boots on the ground, right? You have to be out there doing
Yeah, I
things.
think, right. I think we all have a part to play. Like even, it doesn't have to be the stereotypical chain yourself to a tree. It can be other things too.
Yeah,
It can
totally.
be magical, it can be ritual, it can be the small things that, or what some people might say are the small things. It might be that you have more resources than other folks. I actually just wrapped up another book on activism and reclaiming, which is a strange and really helpful segue.
Yeah.
That's called Honoring the Wild. And because it's part of our principles of unity is about honoring the wild. And I collected a bunch of stories from folks who identify as activists in reclaiming. And so it's all these stories from different places and different times, because reclaiming's been an activist tradition before it was a tradition,
Right.
in the 80s, Diablo Canyon, WTO, we're all at all those things. And there are stories upon stories and arrests upon arrests and all of that. But the book actually outlines a huge timeline of all the different things. And just to see that there are different ways to engage and also different areas of engagement, political, environmental, name all the things, BLM, all the different things that are arising. And again, there are different focuses, there are different challenges in the world, or things that are highlighted more, or maybe the energy is just following that right now. And how do we meet that? And how can we support groups that are already doing this work?
Yes, that like support without being a colonizer, right? Like what are people, right? You gotta just always have to think about that.
Yeah.
That's it. And again, it's like, on the one hand, accepting we're all going to make mistakes. We're humans, right? Our meat sacks don't necessarily, the brains don't function fantastically all the time. And we have our biases just from how we were raised. And you're not aware of them because so much of this is just normalized in society. So why would you think about these things? But no, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, it's the great quote, and I cannot remember the author of the quote in this moment. I can find it later, but white supremacy is not the shark, it's the water.
Oh, yes. Right. Right. That idea that, and we're all swimming in it. We don't have this awareness of it. But again, as white folks, we benefit from it, right? And that's why it's not enough to, again, it was something I probably saw on Twitter because I'm on Twitter all the time, but just this idea that it's not enough to not be a racist. You have to be anti-racist in your practice, because you have to be, if you have any position of privilege, you have to be pushing back against systems that support your privilege at the expense of other people. Otherwise, you're just implicitly supporting the system as it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's ongoing dialogue and ongoing introspection, because it's not easy work when you're so used to things being a certain way.
Yes, right.
You're used to walking into, like, as a white person, like me, walking into situations where I might be called out for something. That's so uncomfortable. Of course it is. It doesn't ever happen.
Right.
Like, why is that a bad thing?
Well, and also this weird thing that happens where like a white person's discomfort is equated to a person of color's daily experience with racism, structures of racism. Those are not equivalent, friends.
I, as a person, can enter into a conversation, not have it go the way that I thought it was going to go, and then I can go home and forget completely about it. I mean, that's just the reality of the way my life, the way I look, the way places I inhabit, and there are folks experiencing ongoing oppression 24/7 in all of the things that they interact in this world.
Yes. Yes.
And those are not comparable.
In any way. Just this conversation about, again, my Black friends are always telling me like that they have to take such care for their feelings. Yes, exactly. Because if they are angry at a situation they should be rightfully angry about, they immediately get painted and dismissed as the angry Black person, especially the angry Black woman, right? We've got this stereotype. So like the brutality of not even being able to share your emotions as you just go about your daily life dealing with overt racism and microaggressions. Again, not comparable to somebody calling you a racist or calling your behavior racist. Yeah.
For me, it's like the difference between I'm annoyed, and I would imagine the experience of other folks are exhaustion.
That's exactly, just existential exhaustion.
Dehumanization. That's just not the same thing.
Not the same thing. Right. Right. And again, these are important conversations to be having, because I'm going to forget. I want to say it was called My Grandmother's Hands. Yeah. And just that conversation about like, okay, you were raised racist, right? Like any racism that you have, you don't have to look at it as a moral failing. Just look at it as part of how you were raised and something that you can unlearn. And that there are new ways that you can relearn, right? That it's part of a process. Like, again, white people hate being called racist. I was like, okay, but that's just how you were raised, you know? Like, again, we were also raised in a society that it is homophobic and misogynist and so many different systems of hatred. They are part of the programming. And you have to question, what is the programming? What is something I actually believe? Why do I believe this thing? And then again, that idea of reclaiming that activism, it starts with you, right? How do you decolonize your own minds? And then you can go forward and actually be a benefit to the world. And so, like you said, support people who are on the ground trying to make changes, as opposed to coming in and saying like, all right, I know you've been doing things this way, but actually, let me tell you how you should be doing it.
Oof. I mean, I think that the other question that's in there too, it's, thinking about who benefits from these systems. That's really the thing. Like, who benefits from this? And that makes sense. I mean, I don't like it, but it makes sense.
Of course, yes.
So how can I continuously decolonize my thinking or examine it, have hard conversations, and be willing to take feedback? It's okay. We are supposed to, I think, learn and grow.
Yes. Right.
And not just be sort of saying things to say things, to, really to change and to adjust our thinking based on new information.
I don't know why that seems to be such a problem for so many.
It sounds simple, but it is. I mean, for myself too. I mean, absolutely. And I am not a perfect being by any stretch. So
yes,
still things I encounter where I go, oh,
right. It's brutal sometimes. You're like, oh, that was in me. Oh no.
Yeah, I've watched TikTok too many times, so I'm thinking about, oh no, my programming is broken. Yeah, I think that, it's true, but it's part of this. If you want to like create change and things like that, you want to see things differently, you want to see people that you love belong to society, belong to community. It's not about just the fitting in. This is like a big thing for me lately. I'm thinking about that. Brene Brown talked about it. Like, so many folks feel like they just have to fit in, and I really want folks to belong. So how can I be part of that conversation, action, ritual? I don't know.
Exactly. I think about it, my grandparents were immigrants from Poland after World War II, and their entire sensibility was, how do we assimilate? They didn't even teach me how to speak Polish because they wanted me to be a good American girl. And what is lost in those processes, right? I mean, I'm grateful my grandparents told me a lot of their stories from when they were growing up, because they didn't tell my mom and they didn't tell my aunt. So I got to hear a lot of those, and that has informed so much of who I am and how I operate in the world. And so again, so much is lost by just trying to fit in, by just trying to assimilate. Like there's so much beauty in just accepting people for who they are. and letting them be who they are and flourishing. And I think not enough people are having the conversation of why are we continuing to support a society that demands either exclusion or assimilation in order to be a part of this?
I'm shaking my head. I don't know.
Yeah.
How boring. How I don't know.
Right.
I think back to, I don't know if you ever stop and think about like as I was in my teens or my 20s where I just wanted to fit in.
Yes.
Like all I wanted to do, I wanted the Esprit bag and the Benetton stuff and all of that so I could look like everybody else and have the same shoes and the same socks and all of that. And I think back to that and I go, what a waste of energy.
Yes.
Like even just thinking about our own development as humans, like we do that for a while. And at some point we just kind of go, and we try something else. We might move to a different group. There's that too. But I just think about like, we are so capable of change and adjustment and movement, and why not our thinking too?
That aside from the neuroplasticity benefits, right, and building new neural pathways and brain health, so actual physical benefits to this, but just I this is going to be a weird segue, but I think of this in terms of people's response to the pandemic, that there are so many people who just want things to go back to how they were. And friends, this was a traumatic break. There's no going back. The before times were the before times, and there is now. And we can rebuild something, but it's never going to be the way it was. And maybe it is having a trauma background and having to adapt and survive, and understanding that there are certain breaks with an old self that can never be returned to. I'm not afraid of the fact that the society is never going to look the way it looked before. Those moments of breakage, those moments of collapse, those moments of things falling apart are incredibly powerful, because you get to decide how you want to put them back together again.
Exactly. And I think there's such potential in that.
Absolutely. Yes. Again, like talking about reclaiming as an activist tradition, that I'm a chaos magician. It's so much action based and being invested and trying things and playing around and, oh, this works, this doesn't work anymore. What's the new thing that'll work for me? That kind of engagement and trial and error and play. I mean, play is a big part of my philosophy and my magical practice. Yeah. I got kind of a sense of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think that like it's a flexibility. It is also resilience. It is the tree that bends, instead of breaking. And, when you were talking about, this is, there's cracks and everything, I think of Cohen. Yes. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Right. Exactly. And I'm excited for that. I actually think, although I'm a little nervous, I've seen some things in this society that were really, I don't know why I should have been surprised, but there's been some real heartbreak in the last few years, and watching something happen that I didn't expect. I guess I am a very hopeful, positive person, and I believe that the universe is inherently beneficial, like or a benefactor. And to watch something horrible happen and not have people come together, that's been the heartbreak for me.
Of course, yes.
But I think that I'm curious about what happens next, because I think that there is, I don't want to say this was needed to shift people, because I don't like that idea.
Yes.
I'm not a big fan. I don't think everything happens for a reason. I think that we can make a lot of meaning out of things.
Yes.
I don't think things happen for a reason.
Thank you. Me either.
There's a lot of flaws in that premise. So I think about, what next? How can I arrive? How can I show up? How can I meet the moment, as our governor says so often? And, how can I meet this? And my hope is that my magic, the structures of how I interact in a mostly non-hierarchical tradition, we're human, right?
Yeah.
one of the things I think that is most helpful for me, that is why I love reclaiming so much, and I'm not actually proselytizing this, I just happen to know it pretty well, and it's the idea of your own spiritual authority rooted in community.
Yes.
So this idea that only you can interpret the divine for yourself. There is no one way to do this. There are many different ways, but rooted in community says what you do might have an impact on others.
Yes.
So how can you hold those things? And I think that moving forward from the pandemic and from any sort of tragedy, like what makes sense to me now, and how can I do this in the context of other folks? I'm not the only person.
Yes. Yes. And that's something that I mean, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, saw and became very clear that the number of people I knew who were posting on Facebook, on Twitter, everywhere, does anyone need anything? If you're out of a job and you need groceries, I have a car, I can get things for you. There was this incredible, I don't despair despite seeing the incredible selfishness of a lot of people, because I feel like this cracked open a way of thinking for a lot of people in terms of questioning the way society is, questioning how atomized we are, and really coming together and saying, okay, again, this isn't, it didn't turn into the apocalypse that a lot of people expected, right? It became, so many people were just like, let's work together, let's take care of each other, how can we help each other? And still have that mindset now, I feel more than ever, because they were challenged and they met that challenge, and it's shifted the way that they look at the world and the way that they interact with people.
Right. I think that there became more of the conversation, or maybe the more out loud conversation, about community care.
Yes.
How do we care for each other in this? Because maybe we can't rely on certain groups and certain organizations that I kind of thought they were going to be around for some stuff, but maybe not. So how do we collect our resources? How do we, prepare each other and help others where they're at? And I have really loved that. That has been tremendous and affirming.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, seeing mutual aid groups pop up, community-based mutual aid, again, very kind of anti-capitalist, openly questioning of the hoarding of resources and the failures of government, and saying, okay, we need more community-based grassroots organizations, because the structures that we grew up thinking were going to take care of us, they're not. That's not there. How do we take care of each other? How do we protect each other? How do we move forward again as a community? And again, that beautiful mix of, we are individuals and we have ideas, but we're working together in support of a community, because we understand it's not just us, it's everyone. Our decisions affect everyone. So with that awareness, how do we change our behavior? How do we watch our behavior to make sure that vulnerable people are taken care of, that the most vulnerable people are taken care of, and not dismissed or discarded?
And one of the things I love about that is recognizing your value in the system. And I think it's so easy sometimes to go, oh, I have nothing to offer. But really, we all have some part to play. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be public. It doesn't have to be any of the things. But we all do. And I think that if that is something that can be brought forward from all of this, I think that will have ramifications that I can't imagine, but I really want for future generations.
Absolutely. And that, again, I feel like people who are empathic and who are activists and really boots on the ground activists have this sense of overwhelm, because there is so much that needs to change and so much that could be made better. And I think you bring up an important point, which is that you don't have to do everything. But doing something is really valuable, and doing something consistently is really valuable, because there are so many of us that if all of us are doing something consistently, the world will have to change, period. It can't not, from all that energy being put into the world to create something better.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that in the beginning of the previous administration, there was so much that I felt so overwhelmed. Like, what in the heck are we going to do? And so, I mean, at that moment, I wasn't in a place of sort of being on the ground. I have, autoimmune stuff. And I was like, I don't know if I don't think I can be in actions. But, just donating a little bit to like certain organizations that were in need, but also finding like the organization that I really, really was passionate about. Like, this is the thing I can put my energy and my attention to. And for me, it's all the abortion rights. Like, that is a big thing. I am a big proponent of keeping that going. And so finding something that you're really jazzed about and really focusing there. You can't do it all. You can't tend to everything. It's just not possible. And you will do less trying to do that.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And like, the guilt, I think a lot of people, and I know I felt that too. I'm not doing enough. I wish I could do more.
Yeah.
Right.
Am I not single-handedly changing everything? And I would offer that that's a little bit of a colonizer mindset, but how can I fix everything all by myself?
Because I know how to do it.
I know how to do it. Yes, everybody follow me. Yikes. No.
Exactly. That's it.
Or it works for a very short period of time.
Right.
And we're already, I see in the activist communities around me, you already see the burnout and the wearing down and the what the heck is the point of this?
Yeah, of course. Yes. Yeah. I think too that there is a certain amount of despair because people want to make change and they feel like they're not making enough of an impact.
Right.
And unfortunately, that despair can lead to inaction, which is the worst possible thing. Again, taking time to regroup and to, again, find your energy again after a big energy expenditure. I understand that. I respect that. But also there is a lot that we can do. And if the more people get involved, you can make these little changes. But again, the accumulation is going to be transformative. But you have to stick with it. And you have to understand that it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Right, exactly. I've said that phrase way too many times in the last few years.
Of course.
Marathon. But it's also, so sometimes I think about when I'm teaching a class, I sort of encourage folks who are the outspoken ones, maybe you need to step back a little bit and so you can give space for other folks. And so I think a lot about this being like, okay, sometimes I'm going to be the ones stepping up here, and then I'm going to step back and I'm going to take the rest so somebody else can jump in and do the thing, so that we're never, you're not always at the forefront and you're not always in the back. How can you move back and forth to accommodate your own self, knowing that someone will step in for you?
That's it. Yeah. And I think it's figuring out, it's developing a community where responsibility is shared and there is an understanding of shared responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah. Because again, one of my favorite religious groups is the Gnostics, right? And back in the day, anybody could be a priest. They drew lots to see who was going to be priest that day. That's really, and kind of talking about this reclaiming tradition too, that idea that if you do enough work and enough study, anybody can receive divine revelation from God. So there were hundreds of Gnostic gospels, because it's again, you're deconstructing hierarchies and saying we are all equal here, for the Gnostics in the eyes of God. For anyone else, equal, of equal value, that we can bring something to the table. And you might be quiet, so we need to create room for quiet people to say their piece. I can be a slow processor sometimes. I need that internal. Yep. I need that space to think about what I have to say. And once I have that space, I can be pretty articulate. But sometimes in the moment, I can't even string a sentence together.
Sure. I mean, especially these days. But I think one of the things that, to sort of talk about my tradition and the way that I look at things now is that, in our tradition, you don't need to have special training. You don't have to be initiated. You don't have to, if you want a ritual role, go volunteer. We love volunteers. So go do that. If you want to teach. There are structures in place that you can tap into if you'd like some more structure, but also there is no you need to have been in here for so long in order to do this or that. it's more about like, what do you have to bring? And is that feeding what our intention is right now? So that's one of the things that I like. I think it's in Spiral, maybe not. I know it's in my book. So
Yeah.
something to the effect of, it's been a while since I've read Spiral. So now people know. And something to the effect of, you can call yourself a reclaiming witch if you agree with the principles of unity, which is our document. And not everybody agrees to all the things, but we can, agree to uphold the anti-racism, the caring for the earth, everybody's gender histories, all of those things are terrific and welcomed. So for me, that feels like, I wish that could be expanded out. Like, we all have value. We all have something to offer. And if we could all agree that maybe coming together would be a shared value, maybe it's not just about one person at a time. And maybe if that could be a principle of human unity, that would be great. My Sagittarianness is popping out. So
I got 3 planets in Sagittarius. This is great for me. Yeah, I think, especially talking about the previous administration, maybe we've had enough of demagogues in occult spheres and paranormal spheres in politics.
May you be right.
I love this idea that anybody can contribute something. Is it in service of the community? I think that's a really important thing to think about. We, again, especially American exceptionalism and this idea that every person is an island unto themselves. And that is not how it works, friends. We all use the same roads. Some people are on well water, but we all get water from the municipality. This idea that we're all individuals is so, it's absurd. It serves capitalist purposes. It does not serve a community. It does not serve humanity. Right. And for me, that's always, I'm an Aquarius. What serves society, right? What serves all of us? What is the benefit for humanity? How can we move forward? How can we come together? And so I get real mad. Probably that Sagittarius and that Leo rising got real fire here. I get real mad.
The Sagittarius, Gemini moon, Gemini rising. So it's like, how can we explain it? How can we communicate this to the folks? What's the next thing to look at?
Yes.
Right. And I have a list. I wish. No, I don't think I wish that. Actually, take that back. I'm sure I do, but there's a lot to happen.
Yeah. I think that's hard too, when you can see the big picture and when you're working in communities and you see the power, again, of group ritual, of group work, of working in activist spaces. And this is way more powerful. It's got way more energetic juice in it than any individual can ever have, period. Because the things are so, again, like going back to this idea of the iris and the rainbow, right? You have all colors together. There is a beauty in that is not seen elsewhere in nature, a moving beauty in that.
There's things happen under certain conditions. Like, certain conditions have to be just right.
Yes.
And I think about, like, when I think about iris or any of, like, even magic in general, and folks who are in a relationship with deity or relationship with elements or your favorite tree or whatever works for you. I don't say everybody needs to have a deity on board. But there's also in there about, like, doing that work reminds us about reciprocation of relationship. And that's one of the big things that I wanted to get across in like the book on Aphrodite and on Iris, but mostly on Iris because she was one of my first. And so I was like, how do we, yes, this can also be to humans too. So maybe if it's with a deity first, maybe that'll be easier. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It's, well, and I think it's, we're not, again, my background is sociology, political science. I've been into witchy things since I was a teenager, because of course, but right. But just this awareness of, okay, everything in our society is constantly telling us that what we think is wrong, what we want is wrong, who we are is wrong. It's not just religion that tells you that you're inherently evil. So much of politics tells us that we are these creatures with these wants and needs that are destructive to society and destructive to each other. And so everything needs to be reined in for, and repressed, suppressed and repressed for the benefit of society. But really that's just capitalism and rich people, but we can't talk about that, right? And so, but when you look at what real community is and try to strip away so much of the programming that tells us that we're bad and look at what people really are. I was in an occult shop in Oakland, and the two folks who were working there were talking about being traumatized by reading Lord of the Flies. And I had just read maybe 2 weeks before the actual story of the boys in Lord of the Flies.
Mm-hmm.
and I normally don't do, again, my moon's in Scorpio, I leave people alone.
Oh.
I like giving people space and boundaries, but I couldn't. I was like, hey, I'm so sorry to interrupt your conversation, because it was just the two people working there. I hate that too, as like a former retail employee. I'm like, you're having a personal conversation, I do not want to intrude. But I had to tell them, I'm like, that's all, what he wrote was all bullshit. Like these boys took care of each other for months. One of them broke his leg and they carried him around and they made sure he was fed. Like, the real story is so beautiful that when they were finally rescued, the man who rescued them stayed in touch with them for the rest of his life.
Oh.
And like, because they had stolen a boat and got lost. And that's how they ended up on this island. And when they were rescued, the guy whose boat they stole wanted to prosecute them legally because they stole his boat. And so the guy who found them ended up like supporting all their legal fees and drummed up all this publicity to get them support. Yeah. And they were like, you've healed my inner child, because they were carrying around this idea for years that this is what humanity is, right? It's dark. Right. It's like, no, Conrad was just a miserable person and projected that on a bunch of really good, sweet kids.
Truth. Yeah. Oh, but it doesn't sell as well. Right.
That's also very true.
Not as good of a story.
That's it. Right. Well, also, again, I think because we're all trained to believe that we're inherently evil and can't contribute to society, that there's this weird, almost self-flagellation enjoyment of like, oh yeah, we're all so terrible. We can't do anything to change the world because we're all inherently terrible.
Right. Little old me? No, of course not.
Yeah, right.
I think that's, I see that a lot in magical circles and, in folks that I know and folks that like me in the past. It's so much easier for me to stay in my shadow and go, here's all the crap that is really horrible about me, and then just stay there and be like, well, I'm just going to stay here until I fix all of it.
Right.
We're all changing and moving and fixing and knowing and unknowing over and over and over again. There is no set point to any of this. So come with your humanity, come with your flaws, and you have value in this place.
Yes. And understanding, again, human beings as living processes as opposed to static selves is a so much more interesting way of engaging in the world. And you might discover, again, I never thought I was a plant person. I've got like 30 plants now over here just in the past year and a half, right?
So it can happen. I'm also like, they recoil at me. I feel like that the little entry bit to one of the Harry Potters where the flowers just go down like this. That's how it feels. Thank you.
I will send you a message with some good starter plants that will give you confidence, because there are a few I've messed up and they've bounced back. So
anyways,
yes.
Tell me your secrets.
Yes. But yeah, I never thought that I was that type of person. My mom has the green thumb, right? And that was the story I was telling myself. And then I got a couple plants because the pandemic was rough and I needed to take care of something. And they bring me such joy now. And I'm propagating plants, so I always have more plants.
I hear that happens next. I hear that people do that. Like, and then we're going to grow in more plants. And there's going to be more. I think it's amazing.
Exactly. Yes. It does get a little overwhelming, especially if you have any ADHD, addictive, obsessive personality issues. Then it's like, I need more shelves for my plants that I've repotted.
Now that I am hyper focused on this one thing, this is all we do now. Yes.
That's it. Yes. But
it's a testament to change. Like, we can all change, but that's also comes with change in ways that maybe you don't want to. So it's a constant like reevaluation of like, wait, where am I headed right now? What are my values at this moment?
Yeah.
And I don't think let's talk about me. I don't know that I was ever taught to think of my life like that.
Right.
You know, it's often been so much in reaction versus like, what is my set point, or at least in the moment, what are my values or my desires for myself in this moment?
Yes. Right. And that awareness and that acceptance, again, that those things can change, that and those things can evolve. I certainly was not taught to adapt to the moment or to do anything affirming to me, except, again, like I mentioned, Polish immigrant family. So you can do what you like in your free time, but you have to do work. There's certain obligations that you have to fulfill. And interrogating that, thankfully I started interrogating that in my mid-20s, like, says who?
Yep.
Says who?
According to who?
According to who? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much too, I think, that lives in our bodies. And I think that it's so easy right now to have like a conversation about it, but so much of it is also in our bodies. Like, I think about, the body keeps the score by Vandal Best. I can't say it right now.
Yeah, it's okay.
But I think about that in terms of all of this. Like, we also are products of our ancestors. We have things that live in us that maybe we don't know live there. And so the constant sort of dance with not only our thoughts, but also our bodies, sensations and interactions and reactions to things, I think, is also important information to tap into.
Absolutely. And to the writers that have affected more of my thinking than probably anyone else are Herbert Marcuse and Alice Miller.
Yep.
And just this idea of being alienated from our own bodies. So how do you ever figure out what you want? Even the process of work, labor, right? We're alienated from our own bodies. We're not tending fields. We're so alienated from our food, from all the processes. I think that's why tending to plants has been so good to me, because it's learning natural cycles and rhythms and attending to these other living creatures who get a little fussy sometimes, right?
Right. Oh my goodness. So many needs.
No, exactly. And the needs change, and they change on a dime sometimes. You're like, I've been watering you the same way for a year.
Why is this not working now?
Why is this not working?
Well, really, I got pandemic kittens. So I feel that. I know a couple of them have tried to come in here. They've been yowling like crazy. I don't know if you've heard them.
I haven't heard that. I have seen you looking over. I'm like, are there pets there?
There are. It's just going to be worse if I close the door. So
of course.
One of them is just staring at me right now. So they're almost 2. So, I mean, but like, that has been so great. Like, exactly. Like, this relationship today works like this. Tomorrow might be something different.
Yeah.
I also noticed that, in interactions with people, cats, plants, things like that, I also see my attachment stuff. I also see like, so it's okay for this other being. And I'm just like, I'll just follow you where you're at and meet you in the way that you interact, versus when I'm with a human, I'm like, you need to interact the way that I want to interact. And it's been real healing.
That's so good.
I think I can also say annoying, but yeah, it's been mostly healing, mostly.
Okay, that's Sagittarius. You're allowed to be annoyed at whatever you want to be annoyed at.
Yeah. It's just like, oh, you want to play. Okay, I don't really have time to do that, but this is what feeds you, and I love you and I want to support you. So
Exactly.
I need to make space for that.
Yes, right. One, what a beautiful way of just walking through the world too.
Oh,
Responding to people with what they need in the moment. And again, acting from a place of love. And I love that language of what is feeding you right now. What is the food you need? Because it is from a spiritual perspective, right? It's feeding your life force, right? And just as we carry trauma in our bodies, we carry the memories of joy in our bodies too, like that energy going through the world.
what would it be like if we sought to nourish each other, but also to nourish ourselves?
Yes.
Because I think that that would, I don't want to say cure because I don't think that's true, but would it help hold trauma more gracefully and more gently, knowing that it is very often a shared experience,
Yes.
not the same things, but many of the same feelings and the same fears and the same sort of pauses.
That's it. Exactly. Yes. Yes, that's such a beautiful way of looking at that. And then again, taking care of each other, working in community, trying to build something, build each other up as opposed and or just not even build each other up, just reinforcing each other, right? Where they are. Like, okay, you're in this space, I can meet you in this space, right? And again, being kind. After going through a lot of trauma in a short amount of time a couple of years ago, the
Mhm.
grace that I have now towards myself
Right.
and other people,
Mm.
because I don't know what they're carrying, right? And if I see people reacting certain ways on the internet, it's like, I have a sense of what you're carrying. That can't be fun for you either. Yeah.
Or just sitting there and going, I see you and I don't need to guess what's going on. I don't need to guess in either direction or
Yeah.
many different directions. But I don't know, for me, it's all about, I think if there were a way to sort of get a bigger word for all of this, like, let's think about relating. Let's think about relationships. Let's think
Mhm.
about relations to self, to values, to people, to gods, to cats, to plants, all of that. Like, can we start thinking about how we relate to things versus trying to define them? Like, what's my relationship to this?
Mhm.
Not what
Exactly.
is that?
Yes. Oh, I love that. Oh my
It's
God.
the way that,
Yeah.
like, it's my newer thing, like, because I Reclaiming has curriculum. We do have some things that we do
Mhm.
teach, but we all teach it differently because spiritual authority,
Of course.
which is great. Um, but it's more often like we teach about the elements. And so, but my thing is that I could tell you what some symbols of air are, but really, what's your relationship to air?
Mhm.
I mean,
Yes.
how about your relationship to air in the midst of a pandemic, about breathing?
Right. Right. That's such a good point. And again, shifting awareness, right? And adapting to the current situation.
I just think that for me, relationship, like we think about decolonization, we think about capitalism, we think
Yes.
about, each other, we think about the earth, all of that. How can we relate in a different way? Or how can we choose to focus on building that relationship in a way that's sustainable for all the sides?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a huge thing for me. And I know that I didn't grow up really understanding how to relate. You just had your place and you acted in a certain way. I grew up Catholic
Mhm.
and my ancestry is German. And so there's a lot that we could say, but there was a lot about productivity and having value because you did stuff,
Yep. Yes.
as opposed to having a relationship where we sort of meet each other where we're at, we reciprocate, we get to know each other as we evolve
Mhm.
and outside of these external things.
Right. That again, feel that in my bones.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And that having to deprogram yourself to decouple your worth from the things that you do. Because I was a perfectionist, and I got praised for all the things I did when I was growing up, right?
Oldest daughter, yes.
Oh yeah, only child. That was great.
That, yikes.
different responsibilities, but a certain
Like
pressure. Pressure, exactly. Yes. And again, pressure conditioning programming, and having to go back and say, like, no, this is not who I am, and this is not how I need to define myself.
But it's so hard in a culture that tells you to be a certain way, and you don't fit this way, and it's like, crap, I'm wrong.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
I feel bad because I don't meet this expectation.
Right.
Oh, and then capitalism is like, well, I have a product for you. So,
exactly.
I
know. Right. And again, I consider myself an anti-capitalist, but I still engage in retail therapy from time to time, right. And yes.
Alter. Right.
Right. I know. It's so hard when it's like, okay, am I collecting these rocks and these feathers because I'm a witch, or because I have obsessive compulsive disorder, or because I live in hyper accumulating capitalism?
Details still arriving.
Yeah. Ongoing data collection.
Results processing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, I love this conversation because it jazzes me, and it energizes me around, like, we can all do, we can all do this better. And we all have the skills and the beautiful parts of ourselves to bring to all of this. And I will always be hopeful.
Yeah. And I think that's
in the face of other things.
Right. And again, I think there's enough evidence to support having a hopeful outlook.
Mm-hmm.
That I think a tempered optimism is probably the best in this situation. Yeah. But enough people are doing enough good still that hope is, I think, very powerful.
Yeah, I will see the world through hope-colored glasses. That is just even with evidence to say otherwise, I believe in folks.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, there's a couple, maybe not, but
but there are plenty of folks that
there
you
are
can believe in.
More than
exactly.
Numbers speaking, I think we're gonna do fine.
Yeah, right.
Here's hoping.
Right. So do you have anything that you want to promote, share before I let you go about your day and have some space before your client?
Next thing.
Yeah.
Just very not exciting. So so if folks want to read more about my stuff, what's coming up, lots is always coming up. But my website, which is irisanyamoon.com, has a lot of things. It also has a newsletter that you can sign up for, which is what I'm slowly moving towards, because social media is fine, but it is not. I'm also on all the social medias. My name is pretty easy to find me. There aren't other Irisanyas, thank goodness. And for all of us, probably. And my website also has my books. So I have 4 books out right now, but I have another one coming, and I have 2 under contract. So stay tuned.
Amazing. Yes.
Things that are coming up. I actually have a class on Iris coming up. It's the first time I've offered this class, and it's going to be, working with a lot of the things out of the book, but with people, which is always exciting. And it starts, I'm going to double check that because I would hate to say something incorrect. It's once a month.
Oh, cool.
Because I feel like building relationships, I like space to figure out what we last did and what it meant to you. Mm-hmm. It starts March 22nd, and the details are on my website. And you can always reach out to me about questions, comments, concerns. I'm a big fan of, if you want to come to my class, just come. Yeah, if you can't, the resources to pay, that's fine. Just talk to me. We'll make it happen. So There's always a suggested donation, but I will tell everyone, I've never turned someone down. So I will just let you know that. So if that feels like that's the work that's calling you in this moment, fantastic. I aim to record them, at least the parts that aren't folks sharing their personal stuff. Mm-hmm. So I aim to do that. But if the class is like, we don't want to record, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, there's lots of other things I think coming up. I just don't know the dates for them.
Sure. That's fine.
I'm doing an online conference in June, July, one of the two, with my publisher, and I'll be talking about something. And unsure yet. I'm teaching in person this summer. Fingers crossed. So we'll see. Teaching out in, I think it's West Virginia, at a camp, witch camp called Spiral Heart, and that is mid-July.
Okay.
That's on my site. And then I just got hired to teach in Canada. So I'm going to teach at BC Witch Camp, which is British Columbia Witch Camp, at the end of August. There's probably other stuff that I just don't remember in this moment. There's lots coming up, and I'm also working on so it's sort of the things that you and I have been talking about as part of a bigger body of work that's sort of emerging right now. Mm-hmm. And so it's a little close to the vest, but I think that it's heart magic, and it's really looking at not only the actual heart, but also the different ways we can hold our hearts in all of this. So
I love this. I love it. Amazing. Well, I will put all those links. Yeah. Stay tuned. Yeah.
It is, I'm Sag. And so things just sometimes pop out, and then they're ready when they're ready.
Yep. I know how that works.
But, yeah, there's tons of stuff on my website and stuff like that. And I play around on TikTok. I make a fool out of myself on TikTok, which is great. It's really good for my ego. And I also have a YouTube channel that just collects stuff that I've done. Like, so if you want to see old presentations I've done, great. I also have some things that are private right now, but I'm going to ask people if I can open them up, like trances and things that I've done to record for certain rituals. So
oh my God.
We'll see.
Amazing. I'm so excited. Yay.
Thank you so much for listening and or watching, depending on where you found this podcast. You can find Irisanya at irisanyamoon.com. That's IRISANYA moon.com. I'm also going to put links to all of her social media in the description, so you can find her there. You can find Personal Pans at Personal Pans on Twitter and on Instagram. And you can find me at Kali Butterfly. That's KALI Butterfly. Find me on Twitter. I'm there all the time. Normally I end these podcasts by hoping that you have a playful and curious day, which I still hope. But these are also really dark times. And I hope that you're just taking care of yourself, staying centered, staying grounded, and figuring out how to be best of service to yourself and other people, because it can be really overwhelming when things seem really dark. But figuring out how to take care of yourself and other people is going to bring some light into it. So find the light.